God, I didn't think that countdown was ever going to end. All right. This is Christina, and I'm your host, the Gray State Truth, and I'm with Louise today, hanging out on the stream, and we're going to be going into part two of writing Sophia's wrongs again. And I was going to say, this is your host, Dan Hennon. But, anyways, are you there, Louise? Hello? Can you hear me? Well, she was here. Louise, I think you have a mute button on. Are you there? I can't hear you. We're having some technical difficulties. Give us just a second. She might be doing something with her kiddo. Hello. Yeah, she's I think she's doing some stuff. All right, guys. Anyways, so we're gonna wait on her to get here. I think she's got something
Sorry,
going on
I'm
in the
here.
background. Oh, okay. I was like, hello,
Yeah,
are you there?
I know it went really weird, and it just was like kept saying that it was muted, but I wasn't muting it, and so. But yeah, I'm here.
Oh wow. Okay, it might have been like a lag or something with the countdown. It could have been.
Yeah,
Them
you
countdowns
know
are
what's
weird.
Christina? There's always a little bit of a hiccup. Wouldn't be the
Oh,
same without a little hiccup.
that's the way it goes. But anyways, we are going to pick up where we left off a few days ago. And with me today, I have Louise, and
Hi.
we're going to go through the remaining part of this interview. Hopefully, we can get through it in one video.
Yeah.
We still have quite a bit to go. There's a whole another hour, I believe, left, so we may have to do a part three to this as well. Because I don't think I
We'll
can
just see
stand to
how we
listen
do.
to her for an hour. But
Oh,
all right, so let's click over here to, well, if I can get to the screen. All right, here we go. So, can you see everything okay?
I can.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start. This is the interview that Sophia did with Cryptoric, who we've been waiting on for several weeks to, talk to us and kind of get our side. And he says that he's, in the middle, and we've kind of given him the benefit of the doubt, but it's it's going on for quite a while that we had to wait to kind of get our side of the story out. And so I decided to do this so that way I could point out the wrongs in all of this. But let's
Yeah.
go ahead and get started and see what she has to say. I think I left off somewhere around here, so
Okie
we'll
dokie.
just start it here. Okay. So I did go into this part of it the other day, in the interview, that, where they're talking about the pot being grounded up on the dresser and it being weird to Rick that the pot was grounded up on the dresser. But David even mentions in his journal that he always kept his pot on his dresser. Like he said, I changed this green for another green to live on my dresser. So we know that David kept it on his dresser.
I
And
mean,
it,
at the
it
end of the day, it's not like it's directly in Ronnie's view. She's short. That's quite a tall dresser. It's just one of those. I think it's it being like it's being picky. Um, I know people who like leave it out in full view. You know, don't
Yeah.
really hide it away. Um, it seems to be sort of down to the individuals, but I don't see anything strange about it. You know, there's a picture of the bong on the dresser as well in the journal, and then it's in the bathroom, the master en suite in the crime scene photo. So to me, it looks like all of the pot activity mainly goes on in the bedroom, bathroom, or probably like, he probably goes and does it in the garage as well and outside. Do you know what I mean? Just because you don't see it outside doesn't mean they don't go outside and smoke it. It's just
Right.
it's there. It's really not much of a muchness. I kind of find it a bit entertaining to be closing in on that as like a big factor of anything.
Yeah, and I mean they took pictures of everything. I mean, we know that they have, pictures of clothing pulled out of the dresser. They have clothing or pictures of jackets hung in the closet and shoes, and they photographed everything. They detailed this case so much, and what I was saying the other day is they're literally one. At one point they say that there's not enough evidence, and then they say, well, there's too much evidence. And so,
Yeah,
you can't have it both ways with the injustice group. They think they can say, oh, well, there's not enough evidence to prove, but then there's too much evidence to go through. Like it's so much evidence to go through. Like, well, pick one. You don't get to pick. You don't get to pick both. It's either there
it
isn't
depends on
enough.
what topic it is.
Yeah, and it's just ridiculous. But as far as David not having it in his system, pot stays in the bloodstream. For I believe when I pulled it up, it was like 38 hours or something, 39
Mm.
hours that it stays in the
And
blood.
this is of a living person
Yes, and
as
that's
well, I'm presuming.
yeah, and when you're dead, your body doesn't metabolize anything
No,
anymore. And so it's pretty much we're talking about a
I,
decomposed body that they're
yeah,
testing.
yeah. I think that's an important thing to remember. You know, like these samples that are being taken, they're 3 weeks at least of decomposition. You know, that's down at a cellular structure that things are breaking down. You have chemical changes and all sorts of things going on top of that. It really isn't as clear cut as people make out for it to be. If they've been taken, the samples have been taken within hours of death, there would be more accurate readings. You know, it's like with the hair, they can't use the hair because it's all over the floor. It needs to have the root. There has to be a standard that they go by, and there's a lot of contamination and decomp that doesn't make it a clear cut and easy case for them to navigate regarding how they do the testing process.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they did have it, hair from the scalp, or if they use the pubic hairs that
Mm.
they taken from Camille, then it would still have to be a living person in order to get an accurate sample to even test. And then, Sophia goes on and on about this amino acid test. That is a test for vitamin deficiency, vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin D, magnesium, things like
Mm.
that. It has absolutely nothing to do with psilocybin, shrooms at all. It is
Yeah,
simply a test that tested for deficiencies to see, to rule out a natural cause of death. We know that they didn't die a natural cause, but they still have to rule that all out when it comes to, a medical examiner's point of view. And amino
yeah,
acid is simply a test for those types of deficiencies. It has nothing to do with shrooms. The panel that they did, the forensic panel, for the drug testing, the forensic drug test that they did was a normal drug test that only picks up THC, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, benzodiazepines, opiates. you can't even test for shrooms. There is,
No,
I read on a
it's not
thing the other
included
day,
in it.
it's not included in that test, and it's also very unlikely for it to show up on any type of drug test, you know, and
Yes.
that's stated in, medical stuff that you could look up online. I mean, it's out
Mm,
there. And so this nonsense of, oh, he didn't have anything in his system or neither did Kamel, we know that, you know, one or the other smoked pot because it's literally on the dresser. Somebody cleaned out the bong, you have residue in the sink, you have residue on fuzzy sticks in the thing. When they did it, or if they did it beforehand, or if David did it by himself, we don't know that. But we know that it was done. We know that it was bought. And
yeah.
we know that David and Camille went and bought it. And so this narrative of Sophia saying, oh, well, she didn't like drugs, or David didn't like drugs. David didn't like smoking pot. He didn't like the experience of shrooms. Well, he sure did, talk a lot about being high and enjoying this self medicating and, finishing off the summer high as a kite. And it doesn't sound anywhere, to me,
No.
in my opinion, that he didn't enjoy it, because
Yeah.
it sounds like he did, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
He's not
listen,
saying that he's going to, he's avoiding it forevermore.
yeah, yeah, and she's like, well, he wants to stop doing it. Well, that's the thing. He wants to stop doing it, but he didn't stop doing it. So you can say
No.
one thing, but actions speak louder than words. And so, you
And
know,
we know that he had we know that he'd been in touch with a certain person. Don't want to name names because it's not fair on that person, but everybody knows who, but there's just no need to broadcast it. But we know that there'd been a conversation and a transaction, if you like.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. They disregard and kind of nitpick what they want out of the journal to fit
Mm,
their narrative, along with the Ronnie conversation, the things that David had said about her, and then them kind of, knocking it to the side by saying, oh, well, when I get angry, I call my kids a little shit. Well, so do I. Everybody, sit down, you little, you're little shit. You're into everything. That's totally different than
yeah,
saying, I don't want you, and
yeah,
we're unplanned, and you have ruined me and my spouse's, newlywed life, and I have to be forced to wear this dad smile. And I'm not
mm,
saying that he didn't try. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say that. I don't know. I didn't personally know him, so I can't say he didn't try. But to me, it seems like that resentment was there from the get go, and
yeah,
my feelings on, you know how David was, and, you know I, in all honesty, believe he was narcissistic. Did he have PTSD? I don't know. Did he use that as an excuse, to kind of
mm,
screw the system to get money? It could be. You know, narcissistic people do stuff like that, and I'm
yeah,
not a medical professional, but in all honesty, the more that I kind of dig into the case and the more things that I see, I feel like, it's coming out a lot more.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
There's signs. There's signs of from the patterns of behaviour.
yeah, and I mean, and it's you can't just be a narcissist for 5 minutes and then turn it off and
No.
then, pop it back on. And so you have to kind of look at every little thing, God, he was really narcissistic in this. Well, what about this?
Mm.
Was he really lying about this too? It's kind of hard to, think, and
It's
I would,
looking at it from different angles, though, isn't it? It's not
yeah,
saying like we're not
yeah,
diagnosing. It's saying there are similarities in known patterns of behaviour,
yes, yeah,
and and this is why we think it's important to consider. And
yeah,
if you think that the behaviour that is explained in the journal is normal, then you maybe go and look at what narcissistic abuse is and narcissistic supply and codependency, because there's a lot of red flags that come up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But all right, well, let's keep on listening. We got quite a while to go through on this.
What timestamp is it that we're on?
31 minutes and 23 seconds, and the
Okie
interview is an
dokie.
hour and 39. So, we'll go through up to like the 45-ish mark if you want,
Yeah, no, I mean it's fine. It's just yeah, no, it's fine.
and then we'll
We're good.
discuss it, but in between, and spend about 45 minutes if that's okay, because I don't want to keep you up
Yeah,
too late.
no, that's it's fine. We'll just we'll plod on and see how far we get.
Yeah, because it's pretty loud back here. I'm sure you guys can hear my kiddos screaming in the background.
It's no
It's after
problem.
school time.
Well, kids should be kids, so I don't have a
Yep.
problem. It's fine. As long as they're happy,
Yep. All right.
that's the
Let's
main thing.
continue. I actually emailed Rick yesterday, and I sent him the screenshots of how long pot stays in your system if you're a living
Yeah,
person, how long shrooms would stay in your system if you were a living person. And then I also added on, these are decomposing bodies that had been laying there for weeks. You're
yeah,
not going to get an accurate test. And I also screenshotted the part where, David said he kept his green on the dresser. So I sent all of
yeah.
those facts because he said it was weird. So I'm kind of trying to grab all those things that he's saying is weird and
Mm.
keep them
Well, lots of
together.
people get a bud of their green and just grind the bud up and use it as and when. They don't
Yeah,
necessarily go, oh, I'll just pinch a bit of that off and grind it up more, because it grinds up better sort of the more that's in there.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going.
Okie dokie.
So I think Rick is putting some things into her head to use here
Yeah,
because okay, along with the conversation with the dog feces, we all know that there was, upwards to what, 28 pieces of dog poop from what Catherine said. But we
Yeah,
don't know what all was there. There literally could have been, pieces behind something, under something. We don't. They pulled out what was readily right there.
yeah.
What was in view. They didn't go through, and
Nobody
inside of
knows
stuff.
the average turd that paleo used to drop.
Exactly.
You
He could
know,
have
on
went.
a normal kind of basis, and what kind of diet he was on, whether he had guts of steel or whether he had a delicate tummy. You know, some dogs can like eat anything, and and it really doesn't bother
Yeah,
their
yeah,
bowels. And other
yeah,
dogs can just like look at a dog treat and have diarrhea.
yeah. I mean, my dogs are like that. Like, I can change their food all the time. They eat, human food. They eat, you know, dog food. Sometimes it's the wet dog food. Sometimes it's the dry. Sometimes it's a mixture of both. And
Yeah,
I've never, ever had an issue with runny dog poop. Every once in a while, maybe. But
yeah,
90% of the time, they're perfectly fine. But again, we don't know, that poop's had days and weeks to dry. So it's
yeah,
not going to be runny, like they want it to
yeah.
be.
Or
So,
it might have come out a bit softer, but because it's not been disturbed, it's and the moisture's sort of drawn out of it, it
yeah.
holds its shape better. Nobody knows, like, without being like gross. None of us are there to smell that dog poo.
Yeah.
None of us, there's all those sorts of things that will be giving clues to the investigators, as well as the fact that what they can see on close-up inspection. Just because they didn't write an essay about, well, we picked up this dog turd, the dark black one, and we broke it in half and we put it under the microscope and we could see that. Just because they haven't written that doesn't mean that they haven't looked at it. Maybe a visual examination, and a smell-a-thon was enough.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to test everything when you've got something called common sense and experience.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't even necessary. And the reason
No,
why the testing wasn't necessary is because the dog didn't kill them. You know what I
exactly.
mean? It's
Yes,
it Had the dog
dog
killed
didn't.
them, then yes,
Hmm.
I'm sure they would have tested it, you know.
Exactly. There keeps being a big point made about how there's this dry dog food in the bags in the corner and the dog hasn't touched it. So it's like, so you've answered the question yourself, because if the dog hasn't touched the bags of dry food to eat to sustain itself, and there's three bodies there that have got clear animal scavenging on, it's
Yeah.
pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and their theory is, the dog was locked away somewhere, and they somebody brought the dog in there, like, at the
With
very
absolutely
last
no
minute.
evidence to back any of this up. It's just a wild
Exactly.
accusation. It's
We know
you
that.
could use that with absolutely anything and just say,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's nobody saw it. Nobody can, it's just crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, even, people are saying, well, they didn't hear the dog. Nobody heard the dog bark. None of the neighbors heard the dog bark. Well, Judy said all of the neighbors, surrounding neighbors, had dogs. And so you learn to block that stuff out. You learn to block out, dog barks. And I do it. I mean, my
Yeah,
dog could sit out here and bark at every car that goes by. And I,
yeah,
I don't even hear him. Or,
yeah,
the annoying smoke detector that you have in your house that the battery's
mm,
dying, you learn how to block
mm,
it out because you're so
yeah.
tired of hearing it beeping.
Yeah,
Same
if a car
concept.
alarm goes off, you don't think, oh, someone's car's being broken into. You think, oh,
Yeah.
God, some idiot's bloody car alarm's going off again. I hope they shut it off in a minute. It's doing me blooming
Yep.
treeing.
and
You don't sort of think automatically, oh, someone's going to be, you don't think, oh, that fire alarm that's going off at the store, the store must be on fire. We
yeah.
don't. It's just like, oh, it's faulty again.
Yeah.
It keeps going off every 10 minutes again. You don't, it's
Yeah.
very rare that people go and investigate. This is why they say to women as well, particularly women, but it applies to men as well. They say don't if you're being attacked, don't scream, but shout fire,
Yeah.
because you'll draw more attention to yourself than screaming, because you hear people screaming all the time, messing
Yeah.
about and playing tricks, and people just sort of go, no, it's kids messing about.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone can hear someone screaming, there's a fire, they're more
Yeah.
likely to go, oh God, there's a fire, and then they'll see that you're being attacked or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Definitely. Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, it's just, and again, like that's the biggest question that I have for for all of them, for Sophia and Greg and Catherine, like all of these little things that they're picking out. William Rail with his timeline of phone calls and nonsense, like what does that have to do with the forensic and the DNA evidence? What does that have to do with the process of elimination? They don't need to get everybody in their brother's records because they're not
No,
suspects. They were ruled out. Nobody is a suspect in this case, and so there's no reason for them to be re-interviewed or investigated, or their phone records gone through, or so on and so forth, because it's not relevant. None of this dog poop and any of the stuff that's outside of that living room floor is important. What is
exactly. I mean,
what?
go on, sorry.
No, I'm just saying, like nothing else matters other than the murder weapon itself, the three dead bodies that are on the floor, the parts that were taken off by the dog to prove the animal scavenging. That's the important part of this. Whose DNA is there? Where do the forensics lead you? The DNA evidence, where does that lead you? That's it. That's like the number one thing in the case. You have your bits and pieces, of course. You have the journal, you have phone calls, you have records, you have interviews with people, but that stuff isn't really relative when it comes down to the actual main part of the case. And that's the
Mm,
part that they failed to prove. They want to try to prove all these little side quests, these little side games. But what are they proving in regards to the forensic evidence and the actual crime scene itself? So,
exactly. Well, there's two different things, isn't there? There's solving who committed the physical act, and then there's trying to find a motive
yeah,
as to why somebody would do something like this. But and there is motive, but people don't want to see that motive. There's numerous motives. It doesn't have to be financial trouble or affairs or anything like that. It's a state of mind
yeah,
that makes somebody do something like that. And if you're of a sound state of mind, you don't do something like that. So you can't understand it. You can't justify it. You can't say, oh, well, that justifies that person doing that action and justifying murder.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter what the police found. At the end of the day, it's none of our business. The families have been told what they've been told. They've shared it with the people who they wanted to share it with. They don't want it all in the public arena, for it to be sieved over and put under the microscope. They don't owe any of us any explanation. So we can all sit here till the cows come home and go, but what about this? And what about that? And that doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to make sense like
yeah,
100% to any of us, because we don't have a right to know all the ins and outs of what time David got up and had a fart. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's getting
yeah.
ridiculous of the amount of detail that people think that they're entitled to.
Absolutely. I mean, you have William Rail over there, going through David's phone records and literally calling people. You know that he's probably called these numbers to find out who these people are and what association they've had with him.
It's
Like,
like a peeping Tom,
yeah,
like hiding in the bushes, spying, see what he can see through the windows at night, seeing if they could get an eyeful of something so they could just jot it down and like say, well, we know for a fact that they get ready for bed at this time. It's getting into like really weirdness of having to go over every tiny little thing. And they're never going to get any clarification because no one's going to tell them anything. Police aren't going to tell them anything. The
Yeah.
family sure as shit ain't going to tell them anything.
Yeah.
The friends aren't going to tell them anything because all that ever happens is it gets twisted and they try to use it against them.
Yeah.
This is why no one will talk to them.
Yeah. And
No one with any credibility.
you can see that the family and the friends they tried to kind of explain things to where it doesn't, out everything that
Mm,
happened that they
mm,
didn't really want to get out. They tried to explain to them, but they take those words and then those interviews and twist them around, and then the family doesn't want to say anything else because you've already went and lied and twisted their story to fit your narrative. So why are they going to
yeah,
tell you anything else? What
exactly.
like
It's like
ca-
they've they've done bad things. Doing what happened that day was a bad thing, but that doesn't make them bad people. It makes them troubled people. It
yeah,
makes them vulnerable people. And the families and the friends don't want to exploit that vulnerability. They don't want to put the whole videos of everything that David and Kamel were going through. They don't want to see their loved ones in that level of distress and confusion. That's a hard thing to watch, and
yeah,
to know that all of this was going on and you weren't aware of it. That's got to hurt.
yeah, definitely.
And think, if only I'd have known, if only I'd have known that they was feeling like this, if only I'd have known this was going on, I could have, got Rani out. I could have got them help. I could have talked to them about it. They could have talked to me about it. All the friends and the family have that thought process. Christmas is coming up, so that the others are going to be exploiting it. Oh, let's see how many live streams we can get on and replays and stuff, and just crapping all over the memory
Yeah, yeah,
of these people when it should be a mark of respect to leave it well alone, let the families and the friends grieve in peace and mark that day as a mark of respect, and just shut up about it.
yeah,
It's hard enough for people to when they lose people at Christmas, but to lose, like a third of your family, Christmas is never going to be the same for them, and it's just horrible thinking, everyone else, Catherine, Greg, Sophia, you can turn your computers off and go about your Christmas with your family and enjoy the day. Crowleys don't have that luxury.
yeah,
All the lambs, just let them have one day where you don't talk about David and Kamel, for crying out loud.
yeah.
Rant
It's
over.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, and the more like I see more and more every week, somebody new is popping into an interview with them, and then these people get the wrong story and then they
Mm,
continue on with it, and it's a vicious process that just continues on and on and on and on.
yeah.
All-
You think if your friends or your family, somebody was close to you passed away, and then the next thing within days, because you're not telling a group of strangers on Facebook all the ins and outs of what you know, then you're being accused of killing them, because that's what happened.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh, cheers, thanks a lot. I'm just grieving for my friend. Now you're accusing me of murdering them. People seem to think that these supplement reports, which is just an overview of the main points that they want to jot down for the paperwork file, there are taped interviews that went on for hours. Yeah, they weren't like, interrogation, but they were still tell us as much as you know. When did you last see them? What were you doing? What was their mindset like? Going
yeah,
over everything, probably starting from like the summer and when things started to change. And I tried phoning them then. Here, look on my phone. Here's the date, says David. Here's all of the times that I called David. There you go. Let's have a look at that. Yep, okay, yep. See, you haven't spoke to him since then, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing more to investigate. They've looked.
yeah,
It's all on the audio.
yeah.
But
and
that's
that's
not
what I'm
public
saying.
knowledge, not public info. You're not
Yeah.
entitled to it. And like, I really don't think Danny Mason's going to sign a waiver and go, here you go, Greg, here's the audio of my interview with the police.
Yeah, I don't.
Come
That
on,
doesn't.
ruin another 10 years for me. Go on, I like it really.
Yeah, yeah. It's sad. I mean, and again, you have William Rail that's probably calling, these random people that either worked with David or whatever, and like literally, why would you do something like that? You have to be completely nuts to even pick
Mm,
up the phone and call and say, "Hey, I seen your number on a police report for David Crowley, and I just, I want to know what kind of connection you had with him."
yeah. I want
I
to ask
would
you
be
some
like,
questions.
"What
Are you the
the?"
police?
I'd be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, my guy?" Like,
Yeah.
no, no.
And then if somebody else has got that number now,
Yeah,
then it's like, then that again is seen as a, well, this is suspicious. Well, it's
yeah,
not really.
yeah. I'm surprised they haven't called Pizza Hut yet and said, "Oh, do you know if he ordered a pizza around such and such time?"
I know. Hey, we better get in touch with Smash Burger. Do you know this man? Can you remember what he ordered? Did he just come on his own, or was he with people, or was there anybody else with him? Was he being watched? Was he being followed? Come on, check your cameras.
Did they go to Taco Bell?
Damn
What did
you.
they eat?
Yeah.
Did they have a Mexican pizza or Taco Supreme? Like, oh my god, it's
Where
pretty.
did Kamel go and get that meal from, that Taiwan? Come on.
Yeah.
Chop, chop. We need to know. It's a conspiracy. They didn't really do it. There's no proof that when David wrote that they went
Oh
and
god.
she got this Thai meal, there's actually no proof that they ever had a Thai meal. Nobody saw it. It's just David's words.
Yeah, and they're using this one journal as his whole life. Like,
Mm. Yeah, they haven't got Kamel's journal. So again, you're
yeah,
just hearing one side of things of our
yeah, and
beloved
half of
David, who can't do no wrong.
yeah. All right, let's continue. We are only 3 minutes.
Yep. We're just jumping about a bit.
Cats are different than dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs are wolves. They're cannibal, like not cannibals, but I watched Silence of the Lambs yesterday, and now I
Oh, did you?
like yes, I did. I broke down and ended up watching it. Now, like Hannibal Lecter's
Precious.
stuck in my mind. Precious, but cats are smaller. Their stomachs are smaller. Their digestive tracts are smaller than dogs. You have tiny
Yeah.
dogs, of course, and you may
And
get that.
cats kill a lot more living things. Like cats will like
Yeah,
kill a bird and torment and prey on it, and
yeah,
mice and everything. Like they like to sort of torture
yeah,
their prey.
yeah.
And they've got guts of steel because they could eat quite a lot of,
Different animals.
you think fur, feathers,
Yeah,
oh, I think I was speaking to somebody years ago. They were saying about the things that their cat used to do, and they used to keep finding these pink things, and they didn't know what they were, and they found out it was, I can't remember, I think it was mice. It was like a mouse pancreas, and it
oh
was like the
wow.
only thing that it wouldn't eat was like this pancreas, and
Oh
they kept
lord.
finding these like little pancreases in the garden. It's like, what?
Oh man. That's great.
It, but yeah, and it's like you think like cats, they're connected sort of to like lions and tigers,
Yeah,
and dogs are, they've got completely different sort of stomach and systems and ways of working. So you can't compare a cat and a dog. And It's a thing as well, without being disrespectful. But we eat cows, we eat sheep, we eat different species of meat. That's in essence all that paleo did as well. He just ate a different type of meat.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, people eat after birth.
Yeah.
Animals eat after birth. Like there's some, your instincts can do some, you know, you wouldn't sort of normally say, yes, I'll have a plate of placenta with some gravy and mash, but pregnancy tends to make you kind of go, yes, I will have that, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I mean, and like just animals in general, he's looking at it. Yeah, it's a pet. The dog is a pet, the cat is a pet, all these, different animals are pets, but they're also animals and they have instincts, and
Yeah,
they're going to do their natural instinct if they're
exactly. Wait till
put
a
in that
dog tries to
position.
start trying to hump you. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're into animals, but dogs, like, they take a liking to you.
yeah, and you made them excited, whether it's
Mm,
doesn't matter what it is. It could just be your smell, or something that you have on you, and it just
yeah.
excites the dog, and that's it. I
Or
mean, you don't.
they see you as a weaker
Yeah,
pack member,
yeah,
and they're going
yeah.
to try and dominate.
Yep. Yeah, my rabbits do that a lot. Like a lot. If you want to message Joe and tell him we're still on, he said he just messaged. But I'm gonna
Right,
turn
okay.
this on. Hold on. So you've seen a few pictures. That's it. You didn't see the entire life. You don't know if he ate canned dog food. You don't know if they fed him scraps under the table. He just says, "Well, we know that they gave him dry dog food." Well, you don't know that. Like, you've seen a few pictures that
Yeah,
have bags of dog food that were
it
unopened.
it might have been that, like, they got those bags there. They might have thought themselves that paleo would open the bag and eat from it. No one
Yeah,
knows, and that's the frustrating thing, because people are speaking as though they had daily conversations with David and they
yeah,
never met the guy.
yeah. And they're in the house and know what the dog ate on a daily basis. Did David toss him a piece of turkey? Did they give paleo steak? Did they give him chicken? They don't know. Nobody knows this. So,
Exactly.
oh God. All right. So she's comparing a puppy to a dog. A dog. He wasn't an old dog, but he wasn't a puppy anymore. He
Yeah,
wasn't a
he's like
teething puppy.
juvenile, isn't he? Like,
So this
I
is
suppose you.
like newborn babies. When you have a newborn baby, when they poop, 90% of the time it's runny as hell. Especially when they're first
Yeah.
born, you deal with some pretty explosive things.
Mm,
And trust me, I've worn those pretty explosive things on several occasions. But once they get older and they start eating that harder food that,
mm,
clumps it together, you don't have that
yeah.
runniness anymore. So her comparing oranges to apples here, literally, has
Yeah. Uh,
absolutely nothing to do with this at all.
no.
So,
They start off on, like, they start off on the milk, then they get weaned onto sort of puppy food and
yeah,
water, mushed
yeah,
up. Then they go to, like, gradually sort of, you dry it out more, and then you start sort of building them onto, like,
yeah,
the young dog food, and you don't have to, they're having the food and the water separately. So it's completely different.
Yeah.
That's like comparing a baby with a bloke who eats a vindaloo.
Yeah. Dogs or puppies poop more than big dogs because puppies' stomachs are smaller, just like babies poop several times a day because they're babies, and it kind of goes to their system because their intestines and their stomach, they're developing, they're getting used to things. And so they poop more often
And
than
you
a
feed them more often.
than a
They're normally
toddler
on little
would.
meals.
Yeah, than a toddler would. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
this is what they're doing, and this is what they're feeding to an audience of people by comparing a puppy, like a newborn baby, to a toddler or a young child dog. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
trying to compare those two and their eating habits or their feces
pooping
habits.
habits. Yeah,
Yes, like come on, like we're talking about grown ass people sitting here talking about this. And does Sophia have kids? I don't know. I don't know if Rick has kids.
yeah,
But come on. I mean, you have a little common sense and thinking, okay, newborn babies are like puppies. You feed them more, they poop more.
mm,
Dogs, are older, they
yeah.
eat at certain times of the day. Again, we don't know if Paleo was being fed scraps from the table or, what his stomach was used to. We don't know that. And so for them to
Exactly.
compare these two is just it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's just the more misinformation that gets out. Okay. So, Camilla's a dietitian. She's a nutritionist. Do you honestly think that this woman would put fruit on her counter without it being washed? I
No.
mean, that is the dumbest thing that she could have just said. Like, yes, fruit does have larvae and eggs and stuff. That's why they tell you to wash your fruit. But the fruit is literally coming from where? It's coming from a store that was probably,
Yeah.
you know, in a
Treated with
freezer.
pesticides and all the rest of it as well.
Yes, and then, Kamel went and bought it, or David went and bought it, and it's sitting on the counter. So do you honestly think that a dietitian, somebody who is deep into nutrition, is going to sit some fruit out on a counter that someone could pick up and not wash it off before they put it out for their
And
family
it's
to eat?
cold, so it still has an impact on how quickly these larvae develop.
Yeah.
It's very rare that we get fruit flies in the winter.
Yeah, we don't either. We get them like right now. We have fruit flies and like drain flies. We don't have very
Yeah.
many big flies. We have drain flies
Mm.
because of the water and the humidity from because I live in
Yeah.
Texas. But as far as flies, like flies, we don't have those right now. We have warm days still, so every once in a blue moon you'll see one in November, December, but most of the
Yeah.
time we do have fruit flies all year round, but I don't see a fruit fly who eats vegetables and fruit eating flesh or leaving their larva in a decomposing body. I don't
Mm.
I don't know much about the forensics of that, but I don't
I think
think that they're
it's in
attracted
the
to
name,
that.
really, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
fruit flies.
I don't believe that those types of flies would be attracted to that. That's just kind of like
No.
a human being. You have a dog and a human being. Well, if you have fruit or whatever would be a normal food, you're not going to eat the dog as opposed to what you normally would eat or what you normally would live on. And
Mm.
so, but I mean, the biggest thing here is Camille was a dietitian. She was a nutritionist. She was big into that, healthiness stuff. I don't think that she would keep unwashed fruit on the counter, to be honest. I
No.
mean, that's just
No.
me. And then, we have the cold weather. The door was unlatched. It was not cracked. It was unlatched and there was literally like there's two pieces of metal that door goes between and it wasn't even open enough you know, to even look
Yeah.
inside between that crack because of those two pieces of metals that were there. So
Yeah.
basically all you can say is that door wasn't latched. Period.
Yeah.
No way a fly is going to get in through there. It's too
No,
cold.
and no dog's going to get their nose in it either, or their
Yeah,
claw, or
yeah. I mean, you're not gonna get a fly from outside, when it's freezing cold outside. You're not gonna get a fly that's lived inside the house for a month before it got cold and still be
that's
alive.
it.
They have a life cycle. They're gonna be
Yeah.
dead before it got cold enough not to be
Yeah.
able to go
Or
back
they're
outside.
dormant,
Yeah.
aren't they?
So again, more misinformation that just flies out of their
I like what you
mouths.
did there.
Oh no,
Flies.
yeah, and it's just a constant thing. Oh God, like seriously, when I listen to her, I lose brain cells. That's a lie. That's a lie.
what we?
She said that's the only thing she has a question about.
Oh,
That's a lie.
yeah. There's a lot of things that get called up for question.
Yeah. Yeah, because she was there, right?
The way that it's talked about, sometimes it makes you wonder.
So I know that in okay with my thermostat's in the hallway. Okay, my
Yeah.
the entrance, the intake for my thermostat that
Mm.
detects the temperature to turn the heat off or on is right there in the hallway. And so
Yeah.
if it's warm in the hallway, it's going to shut it off.
Yeah.
But it's going to be probably a different temperature in the back of my house or in the
Yeah.
front of my house. So where it was 68 degrees, where the thermostat sat or the intake sat in their house, as opposed to the other rooms in the house, it could have been a
Yeah.
lot colder because 68 degrees isn't very warm in the wintertime
No.
when you have snow on the ground. And so trying to say that it was exactly 68 degrees in that house is wrong because
Yeah.
it's only 68 degrees where that intake is.
Mm.
Then you're dropping a few degrees for every room that's away from that, intake area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could have been a lot colder in the kitchen. It was
Yeah.
right by
Definitely.
that back door, so
Yeah.
no, it's not, Rick. But what does no fruit flies have to do with the case? What does it have to do with the immediate forensics? I know that they use maggots and flies to determine like time of death. Where what
Mm.
stage the fly is in to determine a time of death, but they're not. A fruit fly isn't a blowfly. It's not a
No.
fly that's going to do what a normal bot fly or a normal blowfly would do to a
Mm.
decomposing body. And so to say that it's important or to say that it warrants some type of investigation is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is why they're not investigators. Nobody is saying that it's not David because there was no force entry. We're saying that it's David because of all of the evidence together. We know that that door didn't latch because what family and friends even stated that there was an issue with that door latching since they had moved in.
Yeah.
So, to even forced entry
It.
would be there would be some type of struggle if somebody had came in
Mm.
that house and tried to kill David's family. Do you honestly think that he wouldn't have tried to do something, like he wouldn't have thrown stuff around or knocked things over trying to run, or if Ronnie was in distress, that she wouldn't have knocked things over? Camille, if she was in distress, she would have knocked things over. You have
Exactly.
vases that are literally sitting
Mm.
on tables untouched, books that are on a shelf untouched, knickknacks on shelves untouched, literally
Mm.
right around where the bodies were at. Do you honest to God think if there was any kind of struggle at all whatsoever that some of these things wouldn't have been knocked down?
Exactly. And then
from the
like any blood marks would be in not lining up with where,
yeah, yeah,
and it's all those things, even down to the dust patterns
yeah.
on top
Um,
of the furniture and everything.
yeah, it's common sense, if you start from the main evidence part of it, and that's the problem. Everybody wants to look at these small little things like the fruit
Mm,
flies or the dog poop or the phone calls or this or that. Like, what my suggestion is to look at the main part of the case. The
mm,
three bodies that are on the floor, the bullets, the DNA. What does that lead to? We know that that bullet that had Ronnie's DNA on it, we know that it was contaminated. And why do we know it was contaminated? Because we had a cleaning crew that found it after they had already been there and started cleaning. After the BCA and Apple Valley had been there to take pictures, after the medical examiner had came in and taken the bodies. So we know that that bullet was going to be contaminated because of so many people being in that house. But
exactly.
where's the other evidence, that the forensic, the DNA evidence that proves that anyone else was in that house besides David, Camille, and Ronnie? There's there's a part in here where Sophia says that the DNA, the items that David and Camille and Ronnie were excluded. Like, all three of them were excluded from it. And there was, two or more profiles. None of that is correct. Every single item that they had found had either David's major, Camille's major, or Ronnie's major DNA, with
Mm.
minor contributors being either David, Camille, or Ronnie, other than the
The only
bullet.
thing that wasn't was the knife, and the knife
Yeah,
where they did the swab, and it said that basically that none of them could be excluded from being in the mix. It didn't have anyone as a major or a
yeah,
minor. It just said that they were all like none of them could be excluded.
right. So you have basically three minor contributors or two minor
Mm.
contributors. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that there's some random person. You know what I mean? Like, there's some random person there. It's just that
Mm.
it was a mixture. All
Yeah.
of their blood was on it, or two of them's blood was on it. Whatever the case may be, it was just too mixed up for them to tell.
Yeah. And I mean, I
So
know people sort of like say that we blame everything on the dog and everything, and I mean that's the immature way of looking at it. You have to look at it from a mature stance and go, there is a dog that survived this encounter, who's been in there for 3 weeks. He's been roaming around there. So every time he puts a foot on some blood and he walks and he's walking, every time he puts his paw down, he's contaminating
yeah,
something with blood from somewhere else. So it's not as clear cut as people like to make out, and it's not us blaming the dog. It's a fact.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
unless he had sterile shoe covers on his paws.
Yeah, or he was carrying around the knife and stabbed one of them. That's blaming the dog.
Yeah,
Saying Paleo pulled the trigger, or saying Paleo stabbed someone, or saying that Paleo, got up
did the
and
writing on the wall.
grew thumbs and drew the writing on the wall and faked the footprints and walked around and wrote notes on the computer. That would be blaming the dog. But,
Yeah,
like, saying that he scavenged them because he didn't want to starve to death, his natural instincts, you know, we're not blaming him. We're saying
no,
he basically did what he had to do to survive. He
yeah,
was a living animal in a house with three dead bodies. Like, what else is he going to do besides, run around, lay around, eat, and poop? That's it. He doesn't
exactly.
have anything else he can
No,
do. So,
just worry and get anxious and
yeah, yeah. I mean,
chew
that's
things.
he's not a living person that would have a thought process of, you know oh, I need to get out of the house, I need to go find help for my owner, so I have to learn how to open this door. He doesn't have that type of thought process. There are animals that can
No,
open doors, but it's not an instinct. Like, for example, if he needed water, he's going to find a way to sniff out water because it's a necessity. It's a basic need to survive.
Yeah.
Opening the door to go find somebody to save your owner isn't a necessity. It's not a survival, mechanism. So he's not going to have a thought process to do that. The thought
No,
process
that the
of
only thing
finding
there would be
water.
when he saw Colin and he saw somebody was outside, like near or on his territory,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
went to investigate to see what was what, and he caught Colin's attention, and so he was rescued.
Yeah. Yeah. And he barked because somebody was there, not because he was trying to protect, David and them or whatever the case may be. He barked because somebody was on the property.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, dogs
how
bark.
does it? Yeah, how do no one knows where Paleo liked to sleep? He might have liked to sleep on the sofa. He
Yeah.
might have liked to sleep on the sofa down in the basement. He might have spent a lot of time in the basement. So if anybody like had sort of come to like drop the mail off, it's not like he was
Yeah.
going, "Oh, the mailman comes at this time.
Yeah.
I must set my alarm and bark at this time so that I get his attention."
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just stuck in this situation, doing what he has to do to get by.
Yeah.
Poor little devil.
I mean, if he's in the basement, he's not really going to hear, somebody walking
Exactly.
on the sidewalk. It's the small, ridiculous little things that they bring up, and then
If he
that's
was howling in the basement, people wouldn't hear it.
yeah, yeah. No, no. He couldn't have opened the door because of how sliding doors are. There's those two grooves, pieces of metal. The sliding doors, when you pull it closed, you have those two little groove pieces of metal, the frame that it goes in between, and then the latch is in the middle. It latches. It
And
wasn't
they're
even
heavy.
open. It wasn't even open enough to pass the little metal latches. So how would he have stuck his nose in between those that metal frame to even open it?
And get any leverage.
Yeah. I mean, oh God. He didn't need to. He didn't need to destroy the dog food bags because he had three three bodies right in front of him. It was easier food than him trying to dig through a bag of food.
Yeah.
Nobody knows if he tried to go outside. I mean, how does she know he didn't try to go outside? He could have put his paws on that back door. Nobody
Mm.
knows. And for her to say, well, he didn't try to go outside, like, you weren't there, Sophia. Even though you want to believe you were not physically there. Oh God. So what dogs are used to, they bark at things, for example. So Paleo probably had a certain spot that he hopped up in the window when, Kamel came home or David came home or,
Yeah.
Ronnie came home. Paleo probably had a certain spot that he knew in that window that he could shimmy himself into that didn't knock stuff over. I know back when I was younger, we used to have shelves like that in front of our big picture window. And our dog
Yeah.
would scoot in between the two shelves, or
Yeah.
to the side where the curtain was. He would nudge the
Yeah.
curtain and stand up in front of the curtain where the curtain's at. And so to
Yeah.
say that, oh, he didn't knock things down, like
And they're
that
not
doesn't,
high shelves, and
yeah,
he's got his paws sort of outstretched and he's
yeah,
on his rear legs, so he's got kind of quite a bit of clearance.
yeah. And it's, again, that's petty stuff. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Whether he knocked it down or he didn't knock it down. Like, who
Yeah,
cares?
some dogs are incredibly clumsy, others aren't.
But, like,
It's
that, but
irrelevant.
my question is, what does that have to do with the DNA and the forensics of this case? Nothing.
God knows.
Like, that's what I don't understand. That these
But he
small
didn't knock
little,
over the blue yoga mat.
oh God. Well, we don't know. We don't know if the yoga mat was on its side and then the police moved
It
it
was
to set
upright.
it up. Okay, it
You
was
can
upright
tell.
then.
You can see from outside when they take a photo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one I didn't know. But like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like,
No. Yeah.
it doesn't have anything to do with anything. It doesn't change gunshots. It
No.
doesn't
No.
change blood. It doesn't change what happened. It's, whether he jumped up on that window and knocked the whole damn bookcase over after, it's still not going to change what happened, weeks before that. So
Yeah.
it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
It's just to try and cast doubt to say, well, he couldn't have done this. He couldn't have barked at the window, and
Yeah.
therefore people are guilty of something.
I mean, and it's, I think that they do this on purpose, honestly, to, like, I don't know, try to sway their
Mhm.
audience into believing something because they have this little bitty tiny side story, whether the dog knocked us over, didn't knock it over. Oh, this is weird. There's some odd conspiracy about, the dog not knocking him over. He's some magic dog, you know. And that's how they get their people to listen, is because these small little details, they honestly
Yeah.
make people believe that there's some type of conspiracy with these little bitty nonsense things. Yes, you can open it. And, it's, that's how they keep people, listening to them,
Yeah.
and not presenting the actual main part of this case, which,
Mm.
they never do. It's always some side story. It's never the forensic part of the case, the DNA, the
Yeah.
actual DNA. It's always a side story and a lie to add to it. So,
Yeah. With no
all right.
common sense.
All right, let's see what else she has to say for about, I think we're going to do up to like Mark 45 and then get off because my voice is getting crackly and the kids are getting hungry and I'm sure you're getting tired. So, again, and Judy has already explained this because she is the neighbor and she does know what goes on over there. That every neighbor surrounding, not every neighbor, but the surrounding neighbors had dogs and they
Mm.
barked, and you learn to block it out. So, no, it's not weird that they didn't hear it. It's just normal everyday stuff that you hear, and you're not
Yeah.
expecting your neighbors to be dead in their living room floor, so you're not going to think, "Oh, the dog's barking." My neighbors are dead. You're not. That's
Exactly.
not
And
kind of
people
normal.
forget that there's garages between the houses. Like
Yeah,
Judy's house is by the garage of the Crowley's house, and
yeah,
then on the other side there'll be a garage, and then the house.
yeah,
It's not like it's house, 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 house.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but But I mean, it's like they they're not thinking like a normal person would think. Like when you hear a dog bark in your neighborhood, you're not thinking that your neighbor's dead. You just think that the dog
No.
is barking because the dog is barking. It's a dog.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if you didn't know that you had dead neighbors next door to you, you're not going to make anything of the dog barking. So where's that
Exactly.
weird?
My neighbour's dog. I know when they're vacuuming because their dog hates the vacuum, and all I can hear is a dog going skits at the vacuum, and it
Yeah,
getting repeatedly told off at the same time.
right. I mean, and I don't know. It's just these things that are weird to them. You know, stop and think about these things that are weird to yourself, and ask yourself, is there a logical reason? You know, for it being
Exactly.
weird, is there a reason? Is there,
If
like,
it was in anyone else's house, would this be deemed weird?
yeah, yeah. That's a teething puppy, not a dog, Sophia. Big difference.
Very big. They don't do it forever.
Yeah,
That
well, that,
teething time is a bit of a nightmare, but then they grow out of it once
yeah,
they've lost their baby teeth. That's like
yep,
toddlers and children and babies when they're getting the first milk teeth through and they're chewing on their hands and they're chewing on the toys and you buy them toys for them to chew on, just like you would with a puppy. But you know, I've grown out of that. I don't know if you have, Christina.
I sure have. Like we have the lemur in the floor that's
Mm.
obviously chewed up. You know what else was chewed up through the house? Like there was probably things in the basement.
There
We
was
don't
some
know.
like Christmas, I think like a Christmas decoration or something. There's a few things that have been chewed in a
Yeah,
pen and so. But
yeah,
again, like what do dogs do when they're bored? One of the things they do is they chew.
yeah. They chew, and he had bones.
Anxiety,
He had
chew.
he had bones.
Mm.
He had bones to chew on, and he did. We know that from the autopsy reports that there was animal scavenging. So he had bones to chew on. He had, these toys to chew on. He we don't know, did he chew on a table leg downstairs? We don't know. There could be so many different things that this dog did to keep himself occupied, but to
Yeah.
make it a forefront of the case and say, "Oh God, the dog didn't chew on his tail today." For the love of God, I think he's guilty because he didn't chew on his tail today. Oh Lord!
Guilty by tail chewing.
All right, 3 more minutes. I think we can
Okie
deal with it.
dokie.
Oh, here's the yoga mat.
I knew it was coming.
How does she know that? How does she know that one of the police officers knocked us over? Does it say that in the police report?
There's a photo where it's down at one point.
But I mean, does it say physically in the police report that?
No.
Okay, so we don't know if they laid it down to
Mm.
take a picture of the bullet from the angle that they were standing at,
Yeah.
because there
Or
was
they
a
might
bullet
have
right
needed
there,
to have
correct?
stepped back. Yeah. Or
Okay.
casing.
Yeah.
underneath the bookcase, or they might have had to move it so that they could step back to get the photograph of the bodies from like the window side. They
Yeah.
might have needed to stand there.
Yeah, because they couldn't obviously stand where David and Camille and Ronnie was laying at, so they had to,
Mm,
or where any of the other evidence was laying at, so they had to kind of, I guess, move it out of the way, keep it in the same spot
yeah,
that it was, but kind of move it out of the way so that way they could show where the bullet was at and the angle that it was at from
yeah,
where the bodies were laying. So there's a logical explanation, just like there is in this whole case. There's a logical explanation for this yoga mat being down, and it's not because an officer just brushed it. It could have been, or paleo could have knocked it down, or anything could have happened. We don't know. But the logical
yeah,
explanation is they laid it down so that way they could get a picture of it from a distance, because if they would have kept it standing up, they wouldn't have been able to get the picture of the casing from where they needed to stand
mm,
to show the distance from the bodies. Logical.
exactly.
I
It's
mean,
not any, it's not as though it was multiple blunt force trauma by a yoga mat. They don't need to like. It's not a vital piece of evidence of anything.
yeah, mat rash,
Yeah,
yoga mat rash. Oh Lord.
you weren't drinking though this time.
Oh man. Because he wasn't over by the window running around and jumping around and barking, maybe until that frenzy happened. Maybe he didn't
Exactly.
go that way. He didn't even go near the mat. He was on the other side of them. Like
Yeah.
it's logical explanation. That's
See
that's what
now,
I said.
now he's in trouble because he didn't knock it down.
Yeah, I mean it's one or the other with these people, and I swear I feel like I lose brain cells for every live video that I do, that I have to listen to them talk.
I
It's like
know.
brain cells just like, and you get so frustrated and angry that it's like, where is your common sense?
Yeah,
Where is your adult thinking process?
because
It's
you're having to talk about things that aren't relevant, and you're having to provide like facts to prove that something that isn't relevant. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like
All right, we have another minute and something to go, so let's get this over.
okie dokie.
What? I have one of those yoga tubes here, so I'm gonna put it in my backyard, and I'm gonna let my dog run around, and I'm gonna see if he knocks this thing down. I'm gonna leave it out
Yeah.
there for 3 weeks. I'm gonna leave it out there in one spot. I hope the wind doesn't blow it down. I'm gonna leave it sitting out there as long as I can, and I'm gonna see if he knocks it down, because he runs around a lot. Like, he's very
Yeah.
active. He's feeling a lot better now. He's not sick
Oh,
anymore.
good.
He's not laying around anymore. He's pretty active again, thank God.
Good.
And so I'm gonna leave it there, just so that way when I let him outside and he gets out there to run around, I'm gonna see what he does.
I hope he doesn't cock his leg up it.
Oh God, he probably will, knowing him. Rick done called her out. He just called her out. You've been looking at it for years.
uh,
That's bad.
uh,
That's not right, is it? Because the parietal
no.
bone is in the back, correct? Like
Yeah,
on
yeah.
your yeah. So she's basically pointing to the front of her head, like he would have
Mm,
shot the front of his head and it would have went out the left temple side, the posterior bone.
mm,
The parietal bone is in the back of your head. So if David was sitting up and he held the gun into his mouth or under his chin and he shot himself, it's going to go up and out the parietal bone, which is what we know it went out of because there's evidence of that um, in the photographs and in the autopsy reports.
yeah,
And at the angle that David would have been sitting at, it is exactly where the bullet is in the
yeah,
ceiling.
yeah.
The
He's not like
trajectory,
directly. He's diagonal,
yeah,
sort of in the room. He's not sort of straight, sort of east to west or west to east. I can't think off the top of my head at the minute. It's too late here. But you know what I mean. He's not lying sort of across
yeah,
in a straight line.
yeah.
It does line up.
Yeah. The trajectory is if he was sitting up, well, like take where his body is laying at and sit him up
Yeah,
and put the gun at that angle. And I think I'm gonna
yeah,
I hate looking at those pictures,
mm,
honestly, I really do. But I think what I'm gonna do is like not superimpose, but like try to make the trajectory. If he was sitting up and where the where the gun would have been if it was in his mouth or under his chin, and the
mm,
trajectory that it goes up into the ceiling, it's going to come out like you can look at pictures and tell from where the angle is and where from where they
yeah,
were laying at.
yeah,
um where Ronnie was at, if she was sitting up where she was laying, if you had her sitting up, the gunshot that came from her head, you can see the spray, I guess, after she was shot. You can see where it would have been at if she were sitting up where she was laying.
yeah.
So,
And I think also you have to take into consideration that he's sitting in this position. He's sat up, but I don't know about you, Christina, but like my head and neck, they move. I can turn my head left, right, up, down.
yeah,
Depending on where exactly you're facing and looking or whatever, it's going to have an impact on
yeah,
the trajectory. But you
yeah,
can still have a range of motion in your head and your body be in a position.
yeah, yeah. Like right
So when
before
there's a
you,
yeah,
yeah,
so when
absolutely.
everyone's saying how this doesn't add up, this isn't straight, this, da, 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 he's a person who's got movable limbs. He's
Yeah,
not like a porcelain statue or a
yeah.
scarecrow.
It changes the trajectory. He could have been looking to the left or looking to the right
Mhm.
or looking up or looking down, and that's going to, change from where the exit is on your body. If
Yeah.
you have your head down and you point up, it's going to come out the back of your head. If you have
Mm.
your head up and you shoot yourself in the head, it's going to like come closer to the middle or front of your skull.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
And it does completely add up
yeah,
the
it does.
trajectory.
It does. I mean,
When you can sort of put, sit him up,
yeah,
the gun then becomes sort of like, at the side of his lap.
yeah,
Um, the distance back where the bullet goes into the ceiling, that all lines up with aiming sort of forwards and upwards kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It really it does add up.
And then you have the force from the gun. You know, most people
Yep.
that shoot themselves in their mouth, they use two hands. So,
Yeah.
you know, he could have had the gun in like the handle in both the back of his hands and had his two thumbs on the trigger.
Mm.
You
He
know, he
wouldn't have
could have,
even known that he'd finished pulling the trigger. It would have
yeah,
gone through like straight away.
yeah,
So there's
absolutely.
no control, absolutely
Yeah,
no control on like the rest of that sort of grip. What happens with his hands or the gun after?
yeah,
It's all very well people sitting there saying, and then it's going to do this. Yeah, the only way that you can prove that is if you film yourself shoot yourself in the head.
yeah,
And I don't advocate or suggest anybody does that, no
yeah,
matter what I may think of them. I would never, not recommending anyone does
yeah,
anything like that. But that is the only way that you will know is if there's a scientific study done and someone volunteers themselves to do that on camera
yeah,
and all rigged up with everything. You know, so when people are saying this should have happened, that should have happened, no. And unless you've attempted to shoot yourself in the head, you've got no idea of
yeah.
what
Because there's
should and
no,
shouldn't be.
you don't have any control over your body, you know,
No,
and there's force in that gun. You know, when
exactly.
you shoot something, especially at close range like that,
Mm,
there's going to be a ton of force, and that's what's, you know, where they say it's odd the way he was found, you know. No, the force
no,
from the gun threw him back, you know, and
yeah.
it's I mean,
And the kickback from the gun, the power from like the gun that's going back
yeah,
sort of from
yeah,
from shooting it, that's one set of energy that you're dealing with. Then
yeah,
you've got the force of the projectile coming, doing the damage that it does.
yeah,
So you've got different places that have got force, like the
yeah,
arms and the hands, because he's not going to just like, it's not a case of I'm shooting myself and then I put the gun down as I'm dying. It's an instant death.
yeah, yeah. You don't have any control over where that gun goes after you do what you do. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have a say so. You don't have, you know, you can't say, "Oh, well I put my hands like this," you know. There's a lot of what is it? Talk about the way his hand was positioned, you know.
Oh God.
If you
Yeah.
lay backwards and put your hands out and tell me if your first finger and your thumb doesn't go together, like literally lay down on something and see
Mm.
if you're like, just relax your hand and tell me if you're like, your first finger and your thumb doesn't kind of move itself together
Yeah.
in the way
Yeah.
David's was positioned. It automatically does that. You know, with some people, maybe it's different. I know for a fact, and I did this too, you know, just to see. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to see what it does. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of the way your arm is when you're laying
Mm.
in that position. Your hand, like your forefinger and your first finger, kind of makes that circle shape.
Yeah.
You know, was the
Yeah.
gun in David's left hand, like between his thumb? Like I said, he could have held, you know, the gun between his two thumbs. He could have held it with his left hand and
Mm.
you know, steadied it with his right hand.
Mm.
We don't know that. Could the gun have been in
No.
his hand when he died? It could have been, and it could have
Yeah.
you know, he could have mummified, the gun could have mummified around his first finger and his thumb, and then the dog running around kind of kicked the gun out of his hand.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
with the floating and the decomp,
right.
limbs can move and things, so
Yeah,
things could have happened like that. And it's the same thing
absolutely.
with like, if you're sat up and you say, I don't know, you pick up a remote control that's on your right side and you with your right hand and you
Yeah.
hold it in front of you. And then if you lean to the left, where does that remote control end up? Oh, on your left side.
Yeah, yep. I mean, so to say, you know, oh, he didn't do this because it, you know, the gun was on his left side, you can't say that. You know,
No.
You don't know how he was holding the gun. You don't know if he was steadying the gun with his right hand and holding the trigger with his
Could
left
have held
hand.
it upside down with the hand
Yeah,
grip at the top, and
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. And
what,
then
how,
we have, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I mean, I've not fired a gun, so I don't know about the amount of pressure. But they all say, you got to squeeze that sort of the trigger and everything. So maybe, the traditional way, he couldn't get a good enough grip on it, and
Yeah.
he didn't want to cause himself catastrophic injury that didn't kill him,
Yeah.
but left him incapacitated and surviving. So he wants to get this final shot right, because there's nobody left to,
Yeah.
I
There's
don't mean
nobody
it
left to
horribly, to
shoot him.
finish him off.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, and also you have to think David was a soldier. And when you train in the military, they train you to shoot with both hands. Because
Yeah,
if you lose one arm and you have
yeah,
this arm, and you still have to defend yourself against people, you learn to shoot with
exactly.
both hands. And it's
Yeah,
like they automatically do this. This is part of your training. You learn to shoot with both hands, so that way you can, if you lose one limb or the other, you can still shoot with the other one to defend
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And so, he yeah, he usually shot with his right hand. We know that. But here's another thing that I could say. Okay, maybe Ronnie hadn't died yet. Maybe he had
mm,
shot Kamel. He left Ronnie alive. He did whatever he did. And then him and Ronnie both sat down. And he had Ronnie in his right arm. We
mm.
know because there was hand marks on his shirt, right? On the right hand side. We had bloody hand marks.
I think so.
And then there was a
I'd
big
have to have
thing of
another
blood.
look.
So, what
Yeah,
if David had Ronnie in his right arm, shot her, and then quickly shot himself with his left hand because he was
mm,
holding Ronnie with his right, and then they both fell backwards?
yeah,
You know, maybe he did it quick. Maybe he shot
yeah,
her, and then he had the gun in his left hand because he already had Ronnie in his right arm. He shot her, then he shot himself, and then he fell backwards. And Ronnie
yeah,
fell and landed where she laid. There's so many ways this could have happened.
yeah,
We don't know because we weren't there. But the one biggest thing is you're not going to change any of the main things in this.
no,
You're not going to change any of the main parts. The DNA, the forensics, you're not going to change it. You can change the story on how it happened. You can say, you know, he shot Kamel, then he shot Ronnie, and then a few days later he shot himself. Or you can say he shot Kamel and he waited and then he shot himself and Ronnie, not simultaneously, but you know what I mean, like what I just said.
yeah,
He shot her and then he shot himself like, within a few seconds.
yeah,
You can ponder on those things because
yeah,
there's not a why. There's not an answer to that. But the one thing you can't ponder or change the facts on is who did it.
exactly.
Who are the victims and who is the perpetrator? And that's the
Yeah,
biggest thing of all. But so we're 45 minutes in. I'm going to go feed my kids, and we can come back on tomorrow and do a part 3 if you want. And I'm sure we'll probably end
yeah,
up having a few more because I like trying to get into the conversation in between these. And I know we both have kids, and it's a different time zone with you. So,
yeah,
but we'll come back tomorrow and revisit some of this, and then talk more about the DNA and the bullets and the conversation that they're getting into here. But all right, well, as always,
okie
you guys.
dokie.
You guys can follow us on the Crowley Case Fact versus Fiction on Facebook and YouTube. You can also follow Deep State Granny on YouTube, who also has an awesome channel and some very useful information. And you can always make sure you subscribe and like the videos here. And Again, I'm your host, Christina, and my co host, basically, Louise over
Oh,
here.
bless you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a good evening. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.